'86, raised up in the sticks, somewhere in North Carolina. Spend lifetime making moonshine and smoking homemade cigarettes, soaking up the sunshine, drinking in the moonlight, sharing good times with his friends. One last liquor run, then he said he was done.
Right, hi there, okay, welcome back. Now for Sunday's video this week, I want to do something that has been occasionally requested for many years, and that is a video covering the use of a motorcycle lift. It appears that many of you are investing a few quid now in your very first motorcycle lift, and you've never used one before. They are a little bit daunting, especially when you consider that you can have a 300 kilo motorcycle up at head height, which could jolly well near kill you if you make silly mistakes and don't follow some basic safety rules. So here today for you, as requested, a simple video on the safe operation of a motorcycle lift. Welcome back. Alright, I want to cover straps and the use of straps and strapping down, all that sort of stuff in a second, but quickly first I want to talk about this lift. If you followed this channel from the beginning, you know that it was about 2 years ago that I got this, and I chose to invest in the best possible lift that I could afford. I got all of the money together, saved up, and I got the right lift for me. This is a Sealy MC 680. 680 is the kilo weight limit. This will take a 680 kilo motorcycle, probably or more if you really wanted to, but that's not why I chose it. I'm never going to have a bike that heavy, if there even is a bike that heavy. And also, as you can see, it comes with that pneumatic pump that will jack it up for you just with the use of the compressor. Excellent if you don't want to stand there pumping your leg for hours, but I didn't choose it for either of those features. I chose it for these two. Firstly, the big clamp at the front, the full height wheel clamp. I chose it for that because I always work on my own, and I'd recommend if you can afford it and you're working by yourself, a front clamp really makes life a lot easier and a lot safer than when you're trying to put one on the lift and strap it down when you've got nobody with you. So that's the worst reason. The second reason was the rear wheel plate. This thing removes, as you can see, straight out. If you've got a cruiser bike or a Harley or something with a big long rear fender, or even something like a Goldwing or a touring bike with lots of bodywork on the back, and you can't get the wheel out the back, this hole in the rear means you can drop the wheel out below. It makes life so much easier. Even little things like dropping the suspension off, so you can drop the back swing arm right down. Honestly, it makes life so much easier, and I chose it for that. But there are lower end lifts down the market, cheaper than this, that will still have that rear plate and the front clamp too. So just choose the one that works for you within your budget. But what I wanted to focus on today was safe operation. So the first thing, I'm going to drop this back down on the ground, put the ramp on and pull the bike up on it and show you the first thing that can go wrong. Right, the first thing you probably notice here, you'll see this on any lift that's heavily used, is gouges and scratches in the ramp itself. If you have cruiser bikes, any bike with a low chassis or frame, it's very easy for the frame to ground on this edge. So before you even put a bike on the lift, it's something you should take some consideration and some time to look into, because as you wheel the bike up, as you push that bike up the lift, it's going to be leaning slightly towards you as you push it. You normally do it from the left, and that frame hits that ramp. That can then unsettle the bike, throw it over the other way, and of course it can do damage to the frame and do damage to your lift at the same time. And there is a method of getting over that. So first of all, I'm going to roll my Harley in, which hits this all the time, and I'll show you how easy it is and how much it grounds, because these ramps are a little bit too steep for the height of the frame. I'll show you. As you can see, it hits right on this edge, and as you're wheeling the bike on, you're naturally leaning it slightly towards you for safety so it doesn't go too far that way, and as you go up, it just contacts the lift there and scrapes the lump out of it. Now, on this particular bike, it's only a tiny little minor amount, and with practice I normally get straight up there without too much of a problem. But if it is a major issue, if you have that with yours and you've got a really low frame, the trick is get yourself a scaffold plank or two. If you get a standard scaffold board, lift up the ramp. That will make this angle shallower. It won't be such an acute angle, it will be shallower then and less likely to hit. And then you wheel the bike along the scaffold plank first. So you've lifted the tail of the bike. Then the front wheel goes up, The rear wheel is on the plank, that lifts the frame slightly and it rolls up safely every time. In any decent workshop you'll see a couple of scaffold planks up the side of the wheel, so if they've got a really low frame, that's how you do it. 2 planks underneath, lifts the ramp up and it goes on. Okay, the next thing is preparing the front clamp if you have one, so let's show you how to do that. Okay, the next thing involving preparation to hoof the bike up onto the lift for the first time, and that is to set this clamp up. As you can see, the way these clamps work, if you have one, is you have one fixed arm this side, that's bolted firmly to the table, and this one, it moves just by being wound in and wound out. Now obviously, you have your front plate, always have your front plate fitted. They are on slots so they can go forward and backwards so they're correct, and wheel the bike in and make sure that front plate is on there, then it doesn't just go straight off the end of the lift. So once you get up against the front plate or in position, there's something to consider, and that is the footprint. What you're aiming for, if I draw that little line there, what you're aiming for is to make that section there the footprint where you put the tyre. Because imagine, the finished position of the clamp, when the wheel is clamped in it, is like that. So I've got my Harley in place, that one's fixed, it doesn't move, this one's in up against the same side of the tyre, and that's where the bike's going to sit right there. Now, when I'm trying to put the bike up on the lift, naturally you open the clamp up to give yourself room. Now, if I just come in to the ramp and I put the tyre right in the front like that, then when I start winding the clamp in, it's going to get to there, it's going to touch the side of the tyre, but this side won't be touching. So you'll be expecting this handle to wind that wheel and squeeze the whole weight of the bike and slide that tyre across that surface, and it's not going to happen. What's going to happen, it will push the bike over. So it's most important, and I found this to my cost, when you put it on the ramp, it's most important to put your tyre up against the fixed side of the clamp first. So you wheel it in, stand it up against that tyre nice and tight and have all the space this side, and then wind it in and clamp it. That's the safest way to do it, and then it will be firmly clamped and won't have any space this side. Right, so there we are, up against the fixed side of the clamp, nice and firm. You hear that little squelch? That means the tyre is pressing against that side. All the slack is this side. Just wind it in and pinch it. Now, something else that's important, you've got a wheel rim and a tyre. I always like to hold mine by the tyre, like that. Start clamping on it. Now, holding onto the bike, one person operation, remember? A little bit of a wobble, not too much, don't flex anything, and squeeze gently on the tyre only. So there we are, we're safely in the front, but that is not safe enough to work on. So let's get the ramp off the back, because that is really important. Okay, as this is safe use, this is an absolute must and an absolute non-negotiable. Always, always remove the ramp and take it away to a safe place where no one's going to trip over it. So the first thing with cruiser bikes, because you have this fabulous flat frame underneath, the long frame rails that run along, can't do it on a sports bike, we'll come to that in a minute. But for this, I put a simple lift table jack. You can buy these from any of the tool stores. This is a Sealy one. I lift the stand out the way because it gives me 2 flat rails underneath to put it under, jack it up, and that just supports the weight of the frame. I'll show you where it goes. Just take the weight. As you can see, that is already more rigid than it was just on the clamp alone. But that really isn't enough for working on the bike, mauling it around, pulling on things, torque wrenches, spanners, that sort of thing. You really need to strap it down. So the next thing, before we jack it up, let's get a couple of straps on the bars or on the crash bars, whatever we need, just to hold it absolutely still so it's not going anywhere. Let's break the straps out. Okay, now that's a pretty standard load strap. I'm not going to get too involved in what they are, but all we're going to do is strap the bars down. You can hook around the bar like that and then come down and then just set that in place. One click, just to get it some slack. We'll put it on the other side. Okay, safe on the other side. Underneath. underneath. So all I've suggested, if you're doing it like I do, stand in front of the bike, get hold of both straps at the same time and ratchet them down evenly. There we are. Now that's all I do. I take 1 or 2 ratchet clicks is all. You don't need to strap the forks all the way down and put them under necessary pressure. But what you do need to do, once you've strapped it down to the tension you want, I always lock off the strap so that in case that gets released, turn it on itself, bring that through and just lock it off. So that isn't going anywhere even if that gets released or something. It's tied down nice and solid on both sides. So that's, if you look now, look at that. That is not going anywhere, and if you push that hard enough, the more you push it, you'd eventually take the lift with it. That is secure and going nowhere. Those straps, proper stuff. Now one thing I just want to do before actually lift it up is something that a few of you might have already noticed is these are black painted bars and you might not want to strap your load strap down onto the bar. So if that's the case, you can buy these, pretty straightforward. This is just a little strap. It's just a little piece of safe webbing, like that. You get them in pairs like this, and then all you do instead is you can put that round the bar instead, which is nice and soft, then hoop that through and through there instead. It's exactly the same operation. There we go. That's it. Nice and safe. You don't want to damage surfaces, painted finishes, that sort of thing. If you've got a regular bike, you can put these around the bottom yoke. Works quite well. You can also put them around a crash bar. That works. Or around a rear suspension unit. And these, on these rear struts on your Harley, let's get the other one. These are really handy because you can even feed them down there like that. And you can bring them like that. And you can strap down in that way, just as safe. So whatever it takes, use your initiative and common sense and just make sure you strap the bike down before you jack it up. So let's get it jacked up and look at the next thing. Okay, now this, as I just showed you, this is an extremely important part of any lift. It will always have a lock. Any lift, no matter what it is, will have a mechanical lock to stop it descending. It's a hydraulic pump that pumps it up, or the pneumatic pump or whatever, but that is not to be rested upon. I think we all know that from car trolley jacks to any form of hydraulic jack whatsoever. You must never rely on that hydraulic seal inside that hydraulic ram. It's not good enough. If that seal was to fail, the lift will descend and there's nothing you can do about it. And if you're trapped, if you've got something trapped, you can see underneath here, the mechanism here is a big scissor type mechanism. If you're trapped in that, it ain't going to be nice, is it? It's not going to end well. So a mechanical lock is always provided on any decent lift. Now this particular one, as you can see, they've got these solid metal teeth and you have this plate jaggeding over them like it does. So as you pump it up, you release the handle at the front and you let it jug over them as it gets to the top one, and then when you reach the height you want, you release the hydraulics completely and let them rest against the metal prop. Always rest it against the metal prop, always descend it until it rests in that position. Not only is it important because then you take the weight off the ram. Can you see underneath it, Pen? You've got the hydraulic ram here, pushes in the centre, and this hydraulic ram, as it pushes in the centre, that's not a good point to hold all this metal square. You've got bearings and joints in all of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You've got 10 or so joints there and they're all got a tiny bit of movement. Now when you're on the ram, you'll find that the table moves around. As soon as you relax it onto its metal prop, everything lines up and sits dead square. So not only is it safer, but also everything sits level and the weight of the bike, which is now right above me, is completely safe on those. My last lift, it had something completely different. It had a hole through this chassis here, hole the other side, and you just push the metal bar all the way through, then let it down, and as these legs rolled that way, they rested against the metal bar. Whatever it is, you must have a mechanical lock and make sure you use it at all times, even if you're not going to put any weight on it, because it's in its own right. This table at the top, this big steel table, is enough to bring it down onto your foot or whatever and do an injury. So metal lock, all times, not negotiable. Let's show you about this plate. Right, I just want to cover a little bit on the use of this trap door at the back. Not just this top end lift, but the smaller lower end lifts often have this too. So if I want to do that, this lift gives me a wonderful facility, and this is, as I said, one of the main reasons I bought this lift is I can take the back wheel out of my Harley now, drop it straight downwards, and I haven't got a faff about taking the rear fender off, which is a holy mess. And also you have boxes. Imagine a Goldwing, taking the rear wheel out of a Goldwing, what a fabulous facility. But because this is a safety related video, I just want to say whatever you do, to make sure that that safety plate is in there, unless you are using that facility of being able to drop a wheel through it. Always important to put those back in before you forget. Right, that's it. Now dropping it down and wheeling the bike off. Next bit. Right, at the risk of teaching you how to suck eggs and patronising you, obviously I want to say that descending from the lift and taking the bike off is as fraught with danger as putting it on. It's when you're moving a bike around is when it will get away from you and hurt you. So this is the most crucial time. And remember the procedure we put it on, you undo it the same day. So don't go unwinding that jack and taking it out, because suddenly you've taken away stability and you've got a 300 kilo motorcycle at head height. If this comes over on you for any reason, you're going to have a bad day. So make sure the first thing is to get the weight that's right up here back down on the ground nice and safe. Remember the lock at the bottom, so we have to pump up a little bit first. Just pump it up. Whatever your locking method, remove it like that one, which is held up, and then press the bit. And when this is important, when you're dropping the lift down, anything that's underneath it is going to get squashed. So make sure there are no apprentices under there, no cats, no sleeping homeless people, or just about anything, including, as I've done, I've left a toolbox under there, a little plastic toolbox. It's now got a big crack across the top of it, because as this comes down, this weighs whatever, that's about 100 kilos, that's 300, you've got 400 kilos slowly crushing it. So make sure nothing whatsoever is underneath the lift as it's coming down. Make sure you're aware of everybody's location in your garage or in the space you're in. Make sure they're not going to walk near it and catch this as they walk underneath. So it's important to watch everything, not just the ground. And that will come down, as you can see, at its own pace. Don't push it or force it, it won't make any difference. Stop just before you get to the ground, and then the last little bit, pop it down. There we are. Nice and clearly out of the way. Release that. Release the other one as well. The strap's off. Obviously trip hazard, so take them right out of the way completely. There's nothing worse than when you've got a strap in the way, you catch a toe in it, you end up Morris dancing as you try and get the bike off. It's uncool. Okay, stand up. Now the bike is only being supported by the front clamp, which on this particular lift is fine. Now if you have a lift that doesn't have this front clamp, some of the lower end lifts just have a little tiny clamp at the bottom, you can't rely on it at this point. You've got to use the straps. Now I've always done a little trick, take the far side strap off, lean the bike slightly that way on one strap. But again, you have to practice that and take it easy. And if at all possible, get someone to help you. How hard can it be to ask a neighbour or a friend or someone you work with, say, just get the other side of this, make sure, get it off nice and safe. So the next thing, get the ramp in place, ready to roll it down. Right, with one hand on the handlebar, making sure you've got it nice and safely. If you've got somebody, get them that side, that's important. And then down here, undo the clamp all the way out the way. And there we are, back up top. And what I'm going to do now is lean it, because you've got space in the clamp, lean it slightly towards you, right hand on the brake, and then look behind you, make sure there's nobody walking past, and then on the brakes all the way. Let the weight of the bike take it down. Be prepared for it. If it's going to hit that ramp, it will pull it that way. So be conscious of that. And then ready to roll it off. Simple. Job done. Again, so you don't do that. Always take it out of the way. Now, at this point, as you can see, I've only got it secured on the front. This isn't a cruiser bike. It has that classic situation with all sports bikes, but there's nothing underneath to jack up against, usually just an exhaust collector, which is very fragile. So what I always use, if you possibly can, is a paddock stand. And all you've got to do, a paddock stand is a great investment if you've got a lift. It may seem a little back to front, but it's a great way to support the bike, because you get the cotton reels on, pop it in the lift and just lift it up. Now, the point here is, you imagine we've held the front wheel absolutely upright and the rear wheel can still move on its own, so it's only the front doing the supporting. But now we've got the bike supported at these 2 points. It's absolutely rigid, there's no tip left or right. That is absolutely rigid. Now I'm happy to work on this bike because it's a lightweight bike, and on a paddock stand it's absolutely fine. Some of the guys that I've seen as well who don't have a front clamp, they'll use a front paddock stand. So bring the bike back a little on the lift and then use a front clamp, one of these paddock stands on the front as well. So that's a good way to do it because it is nice and strong. Okay, for this last one, just finally, what I want to do is presume that, okay, we've learned how to strap the front down using the webbing, using the load straps at the front. If you imagine you're going to tie your bike down, but you've got a sports bike like this with no hooks and nowhere to hook on the back end, and you want to secure the rear, there's another little tool which is pretty cool. It's one of these. Now this isn't the only one available. I've got this from Sea, but you can get them elsewhere. And this is a rear wheel tie down strap. It's possibly most, I don't know, appropriate for a van or a truck or something like that, or a trailer. But for this application, if you're struggling for somewhere to strap the back down, this is a great way to do it. Okay, there we are. Now, just before I tighten these down, if you look at that, just supported on the front, this is obviously really aimed at a trailer or a van, and you can see how much movement there is in the bike. It's quite free to wiggle about, and that's not good, but if you just strap it down, watch. Get them both tense up. A couple of clicks either side, and there we are. Check that. Absolutely going nowhere. So that is a surefire way to keep your bike absolutely solid on the lift, going absolutely nowhere. Naturally it doesn't work. If you want to get to the rear wheel and move it, you're going to have to think of something else. There are things like central paddock stands, the stand that goes through the swing arm pivot and lifts the bike from the centre. There are so many products you can use, but the idea of this video is to make it safe, safe, safe. Things that will stop the bike moving around and falling on your head. Right, let's wind this up. Now, I really must apologise first of all if this video teaches any of you out there to suck eggs. I know that there's so many of you who know exactly what you're doing, but there are still an army of novices joining the motorcycle fraternity every day. And we that have done it before, all of us out there, you watching too, who've been a biker all your life, we owe it to them to bring them along, to give them a little bit of insight, just to keep themselves safe. More and more people want to work on their bikes. They want to start doing their own sort of stuff, and these lifts are a thing to buy. You can buy them anywhere. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them delivered to your house. It's not what it used to be. They're not a professional piece of equipment anymore. So if you're going to use one, there's a little video for you on the safe operation of a lift. The little things that can go wrong. Most of it has come on my hard experience or the experience of others that I've worked with. I've seen a guy break his wrist by trying to save a bike. The bike started going off the lift. He made a mistake, it started going over, he tried to save it, customer's bike, didn't want the bill, he held onto it, it trapped his hand and snapped his wrist, and it was months and months before he was able to work again. So really, really be safe. I can't do it enough. I don't want to be too serious and too miserable, but you know, have fun, enjoy yourselves, but above all else, work safe. You can't be too safe. You can buy these straps, these tie downs, they're not expensive. You can buy the handlebar ones that go over the grips and tie down. You can buy all manner of different lifts, and if you possibly ever can, make sure, always make sure you've got a mobile phone near you while you're working, or in your pocket, because if you do end up trapped in a position where you can't get out from under the bike, you can at least ring for help without having to sit there for hours on end. And these are things that have happened in the motor trade, so be careful with that. So I think that's it, don't you, Penny Pit Stop?
All I can say is have an uplifting Sunday.
I see what you did there. There we are, what she said, have an uplifting Sunday, take it easy, ride safe. I'll see you next week for more fun on this.